Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order to let you know that we record the meeting, that if you want to make comments, we please ask that you give your name and the street you live on. And the first part of the meeting is open for resident comments. So if you have any comments to make regarding any issue, now is the time. Keith, do you want to report on the weather issue?
It doesn't take a weatherman to know if it's raining out.
100% chance of rain, but I was going to suggest something with the public safety issue. Katie, where are you? Where'd you go? Okay. What about private security, if it was less costly than the Montgomery County Police? And they would give us more hours.
Right.
Just something to think about.
Okay.
Weather-wise, what you see is what you get. Keep the umbrella handy, the rain gear handy. 80s tomorrow, 50s by Sunday. Rain, most of it coming in, unfortunately for Richard, Saturday afternoon into Sunday morning. But you're looking good tomorrow for that event tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for reporting, Keith. Does anybody have any questions for Keith or for us? Any comments you want to make?
About this weather, this downpours, it's keeping everybody here.
Well, that's a great thing. The election committee update, did somebody raise their hand? Yes.
My name's George.
Yes.
3401 Thornhouse.
Okay.
And I'm here for the clarifications of the right-of-way from a downspout to channel water into the street. Because right now, part of my property is in my neighbor's yard. And Matt was kind enough, I applied for a right-of-way to put a drain pipe, take the water off my gutters from washing away my property. And he said there needed to be a clarification if they had a sump pump to my pipe, which I don't. Just a way to discuss this issue among
ourselves.
So clarification on that.
Right. And I don't know, do you, Doug, want to clarify it, or you, Ron, want to clarify it?
It is. Yeah. It is on our agenda tonight.
For tonight.
But if we want to bring it,
we can answer it now.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. What is the question?
So, George he has a drainage issue in his backyard and in the area next to his neighbors, and so he wanted to put in a downspout pipe that would funnel rainwater and dump it into the gutter. The village has a policy to not allow pipes like that if it's a sump pump, specifically. His is not a sump pump, but it was recommended that the council weigh in and make sure that that was okay,
or not,
or create a policy that specified that we don't want any pumps as opposed to sump pumps.
Okay. And Doug has a number of pros and cons of various aspects of this.
Which is at tab 7 in your binders.
Right.
There was one other thing. They were repairing the curbs on Summit. I'm on the corner lot. And we did have the crew put in the pipe, we can, a small section of this length into the curb. So it's already there, so there's no further tearing up of the curb and so on. So that was placed in there, anticipating there were not going to be any issues, but we waited for the rest for us to discuss
right.
this.
Oh, thank you for that. I thought that we had previously on Quincy Street, when we had a similar question, that we did not allow that because of the ice in the winter, and in the summer there were that mold and algae grew on it.
Yeah, mold, mud, ice, all kinds of issues. Should Doug go over his pros
Sure.
and cons?
It's number 7 on the...
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to hear you. Can you?
Where's the mic?
Here it is over here.
Behind you. Thank you.
Is it turned on?
Just so you know, Doug is our building administrator.
There's two situations. One,
Doug, hold it up here.
There's two situations.
ahead.
One where the pipe would outfall at the property line on private property. The second situation would be that it would be piped to the right-of-way and either outfall on top of the curb or in the curb. And that would require permits from the town, from the village. So the pros and cons, the pros for outfalling at the property line would be that it's cheaper for the homeowner, it's less work involved. A village permit and a bond would not be required, and a right-of-way license agreement would not be required. A right-of-way license agreement is an agreement between the homeowner and the village. It's a legal document that the village attorney would create, and it's recorded in the land records. Basically, it says that if for any reason the work that's in the public right-of-way has to be removed or replaced, it's not the village's responsibility, it's the homeowner's responsibility. Occasionally, there would be no outfall conflicts with existing utilities because it's not crossing into the right-of-way. And they wouldn't have to tunnel or replace any of the existing sidewalks because it's again outfalling at the property line. The cons of that would be that the drainage would flow onto the public sidewalk, and it may freeze in the wintertime. The village may be liable if somebody's walking on the sidewalk and the sidewalk is wet or freezes. It's a liability for the village. And over time, when water was flowing against the edge of the sidewalk, it can undermine the sidewalk, and in the wintertime, the sidewalk would get, the water would freeze and expand and crack the sidewalk, so it can damage the village sidewalk.
Can I ask a question before we go on to the second option? I mean, he could do this now. Any homeowner could do this now, correct? Nothing we can do to stop it? 'Cause
No.
There's nothing required.
Well, generally speaking, one cannot artificially capture and channel water to a single point on neighboring property. If you
Did you hear, are you hearing it, George?
If you alter the natural flow of water such that it creates a nuisance, that can be prohibited. I mean, this is one of several options. You know, one option would be to outfall in the middle of the yard so that there's some sheet flow but also some infiltration. Generally speaking, you can't discharge at a point at the property line if it creates a nuisance somewhere else.
So I'm going to be technical. Generally speaking, according to our code or Montgomery County code?
Common law.
Okay. And what is the definition of nuisance?
The alteration of the natural flow of water can create a nuisance because once you concentrate that much water in one area, it can lead to flooding, can lead to puddling, can lead to water damage of improvements, including the sidewalk. Or if it's directed at a neighbor, it could damage a neighbor's fence, plantings, can drown a tree, you know, those types of things.
Okay.
So as listed, it seems like the cons, so there's either going to be ice around the gutter or on the sidewalk. So gutter sounds better than sidewalk to me because there's more people walking on the sidewalk, right?
Can you all speak up a little bit?
Just to clarify,
Use a microphone, please. Or just talk a little louder.
so
We allowed to talk also?
We're into public comment, and we unfortunately are doing this, yeah.
George wants to elaborate.
This was bad management.
This was coming up for discussion.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's,
No, you're doing good.
this isn't the normal way.
I will like to say, I work with the Federal Aviation Administration. I'm one of the chief engineers that sets the U.S. standards for airport designs. So I understand what you're going through, listening. So now, I did hear that the option of running a pipe off your property, and if you had a sidewalk, if you had rain like this in winter, I don't think you'll have rain like this in winter, but early late fall or early spring, you might get some freeze over of rain. This section of the property, actually my property has no sidewalks on it, so the conclusion of the mentioned earlier, it's just a real it is a hazard if you have a sump pump that's draining water out. I've seen that, and it does ice out onto the street, and you dump it out into the street. It does cause icing conditions, not only for people walking, but also for cars. So I understand that, and I can see that being a no-no. But in this situation, the water is coming off all the back gutters, and my neighbors complained to me that I'm washing away her property also. So as a good citizen, I'm trying to channel this water properly, and the best solution from an engineering side was to run a pipe through the right-of-way, get your permission, and then feed it onto the street, which is concrete, and the main sewer that collects everything is only like 10 feet away. So it doesn't spill out and flood out the street or anything. It was mentioned about it being a nuisance, causing a problem. Well, the way this is set up, that I have, will cause no problem for anyone. So I just wanted to toss that out to you.
Is that drain, is storm sewer drain on your property or next to it?
It's on Bonnie's property on Summit,
Okay.
on the other side of her driveway. So there's a county, county type of a sewer drain there.
Right. I thought we had experience of where people applied and were able to hook in directly into the sewer drain without it going on the street.
That was,
Yeah, that was in 2010.
that was an exception even then.
Right, so
On Quincy, was it part of
So
that?
maybe a little bit of background might be helpful. In 2010, there was, in front of some Quincy Street properties, active puddling in the street because of sump pump discharges.
Right.
Can you look at
And-
us while you talk? Or at the...
Sure.
Oh, good. Give him the mic. Where's the mic?
Mike.
In 2010, there was active puddling in front of some of the homes on Quincy Street due to sump pump discharges in the street. The village council decided something had to be done because it was creating icing hazards in the winter. And so those homeowners were asked to investigate options instead of dumping the sub pump discharge into the street. And an agreement was worked out with the county for those sub pumps to be tied into the county storm drain. Generally speaking, at that time in 2010, the county was hesitant to allow any private connections because the storm drain is already antiquated and overwhelmed. The council passed a policy prohibiting new sub pump discharges into the street. And before the council decides whether or not to allow rooftop drainage to be piped to the street, we just thought it would be appropriate for the council to decide what should this applicant or future applicants be told, because if you allow one, you probably have to allow them all, so you want to think about the cumulative impact. There may be no better option. Generally, it's a question of, are you going to force residents to handle stormwater on their property with rain tanks, stormwater drainage devices, or are you going to allow discharges into the street? I don't think discharges at the property line is a good option for all the reasons Doug said. You don't want the runoff onto the sidewalk. Well, we're not just talking about this street. All other streets have to be considered. The pipe will be built into the curb, which is another consideration. Generally speaking, the village maintains the curbs, so a question may arise as to who must correct any defect in that drain pipe. We could resolve that with a license to use the right-of-way and address responsibility in that manner.
According to Doug's pros and cons on the curb cut, putting it through the curb, there are not many, as I read it, not many important cons, arguments against. There's expense. There will be a permit required, a license, but otherwise the water will flow out into the street rather than on the sidewalk. and into whatever gutter and storm drain there is. So I think that's the that's the issue. Is this are there any other arguments against it? And if these are the main negatives, I don't see that there's much of an issue in allowing it.
And just to draw another, I don't know if if I made this clear enough, but Mr. Legretta's, in his instance, it was, I understand sump pumps are not okay because you're pumping water into potentially freezing temperatures, whereas in this instance, it's already, if it's frozen, then it's not going to flow through the pipe there because it's coming from a rainwater drain pipe.
But I think we're back to that whatever it is, either we limit this because it's 10 feet from the sewer, the storm sewer inlet, and it is only because of that we are going to approve this rather than opening this to anybody regardless of how far they are away. And is that situation there such that if the water comes out through that pipe, that it's not going to flow into the street, but rather is going to stay in the gutter and go right to the...
90% of the time it will stay in the gutter. It will be, like this intense storm we had today, probably will wash into the street, yes. One other thing to point out is a lot of the houses have downspouts that outfall on a driveway, and it flows down the driveway into the street anyway, so you're not, in some cases, you're not really increasing the flow in the street, it's just changing the way it gets there.
I don't see any solid argument for not allowing it.
Well, put it on your street and just let it roll out. No.
Right, well, that's what happens to rain. It just rolls to where it goes.
Well, I am all for just for letting it go through the pipe, but that we understand that this permission is limited and that there would be a license use for that pipe that it would be up to the homeowner to maintain.
What do you mean limited? How do you mean limited?
The right-of-way license.
This
the pipe.
would be limited to this specific incident.
Yeah.
And that would not be...
I would argue to make it general.
Ron, can we use a right-of-way license to limit to a specific case?
Sure, yes. So the question is, if an applicant wants to discharge their roof drain to the street, are you going to have a policy to allow it without question, or are you going to review them on a case-by-case basis and grant it only if there are special circumstances, such that tying into the county drain directly is not an option?
I withdraw. I think we should wait for the Green Committee to come up with some recommendations.
No.
So that means it's a policy, Ron, right? We have to decide a policy. We're not
Okay, so we could allow this case on a case-by-case basis,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then wait for the Green Committee
Yeah,
to
I
make a
think the Green
recommendation.
Committee may have a lot to say about this.
But I think that what we approve is very limited to this particular incident, and in part is because there'll be relative control of the flow right into the storm sewer, that generally speaking, there would not be an ice problem, knock on wood, and that he would need a licensing agreement to go ahead. Is there a second for that motion? That was a
Is that a
motion.
motion?
Do we just
Yeah.
write a policy on the
Yeah.
fly, council? Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need a
We
motion?
can write it up and adopt it formally too next month.
Okay.
So, okay.
And in the meantime,
Can he?
this is approved.
In the meantime, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll process Mr. Legretta's application.
Okay,
Okay,
back to the agenda.
okay.
That was number 7 and
All right, you have another,
what?
it's still open comment.
Right, we are still open for resident comments.
I'm Dennis King, I live on Summit Avenue. I've got some concerns here relative to the north end. And I'm suspecting that there are very few, other than George here, who live on the north end and would, okay? Good. So I'm speaking for more than just one person here. These are basic things which I see since I'm retired and I'm working in my yard frequently and around the house, etc. People continue to speed down Summit from Leland. Now, that doesn't necessarily say that they are people from outside the community, but there have been some numerous incidents, and I do mean speed, and they ignore the stop sign at Thornapple. This is going to lead to an accident somewhere because the people fly down there, they swing around the corner onto Thornapple without looking for cars coming up the hill. And it's going to happen one day.
So they're making a right onto Thornapple?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Suggestion has been floated around in the past, and I support it. Placement of a speed bump on Summit somewhere between the two Thornapples. Because the stop sign right there does no good. You just blow it. Put a speed bump there. I don't have a problem with that in front of my property.
Okay, we are later tonight. We have our engineer here and are going to talk about traffic on Thornapple and
Taylor.
And Taylor.
And any observations on Summit would be welcome.
Right.
The key thought that I want to bring out tonight is we have so much cut-through traffic that comes out from the Leland direction and from also back on Winnett, coming out from there. They fly up the hill and they go both directions there on Summit Avenue. Have no regard for the speed or the people. I see the guys who work in these yards, the landscape crews, and they've got big trucks, small trailers, and people just blow right past them, not thinking that there could be a guy that steps around a corner.
Right.
And it's going to be a really, really sad situation if somebody does. So there really needs some physical intervention up there to take and curtail this activity. It's getting out of control. I've even talked to a couple of Montgomery County policemen who will sit further down Thornapple.
Right.
And I've suggested to them, come up top to the hill. I guarantee you'll be able to meet your monthly quota. I haven't seen anybody come up there. I don't know, what are they not getting? The people continue to ignore, the people continue to ignore the stop sign, which I already mentioned. People are starting to park in some of the strangest places, which occlude both intersections concerning Thornapple. You've got Thornapple that runs from the south, from the west, and you've got a Thornapple that runs from the east. And I've seen people park right up to and in front of the stop signs. Buses have to get around the corner.
Are these residents or are they the lawn people? Because I notice a lot of the lawn people are parking.
They have better common sense than some of the people that I see park a private vehicle there. Now, they're not residents. They're vehicles that I don't even recognize. It's out of control.
Okay.
Let's see here. What regulations do we have in the community relative to excessive rain runoff from someone's property onto, in particular, my property? Do we have codes, guidance, regulations, or anything out there?
My understanding is that that's a county issue because the Village of Martin's Additions does not control water runoff, but the county does. And you can contact the county and they will look at the situation.
Is it also just a property? Private.
Unless, is there construction?
No, this is just, the house to my south side of mine, and there are 3 downspouts, and I've done a lot of landscaping, some expensive landscaping in one area, and I'm getting some of the stuff washed out every once in a while. That bad storm we had about 2 weeks ago, I had a lake in my front yard, and it's all relative to this person's gutters and downspouts dumping out onto my property. I've put up with it for a number of years, just being nice, let's get along in the neighborhood. But there've been a few more grains of sand put on the pile, and I'm not going to put up with that any longer. So I looked
There
on
are-
the
yeah,
county
there-
website today, and I could not find anything, and I did talk with someone on the county about this. They couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to find anything in the village code or the county code unless your neighbor is engaged in construction and disturbing more than 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
I think. Then they need a sediment control permit, and then they need water drainage measures unless the county grants a waiver. But yeah, absent those regulations, you do have common law. You know, a neighbor, as we discussed before, can create a private nuisance for his or her neighbor with, with drainage. But generally speaking, water is allowed to flow as it naturally would. But if someone does something to unnaturally capture it and focus it at an area such that it creates a nuisance, then there might be a private cause of action.
Then I'm in the process of taking it up with this person, but they have not responded to me in almost 2 weeks now. The contractors that are working on, as I call the relocated house on Thornapple, I've noticed a few times that they have overstepped their bounds with their work hours.
Yes.
And I understand this is not new news for anybody in this room. Can there be a thought to get the hours changed in the community to back them up from 10 p.m. to 7 p.m.? I think it would make a real fine gesture for the community.
Are our hours really 10 p.m.?
9:30, I believe, or 9.
9 o'clock.
They work till 10.
It's 9.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 7 to 9 on weekdays, basically.
I see them through my back.
7 to 9 and 9 to 7 on weekends is generally.
7 to 9.
Okay.
They've been there at 10.
And if they're after 9, and we've had a number of complaints, that I think that it's possible for us to issue a stop work order.
Right, I understood about that, but I'm looking for something that's permanent, long-term, because you will still wind up getting infractions, and then you have to go through the cycle of issuing that stop work order.
Right.
Where if you have the regulation out there to start with, and it's presented and clearly explained to the contractor, hey, here it is, don't go over it.
Well, in fact, it is on the building permit that they have signed that we show those hours. I understand, God, this isn't the first time we've heard this, by the way, but it's...
So he's suggesting to change that.
To make it 8 o'clock. I mean, instead of 9 o'clock at least. Something that makes it. 9 o'clock is very late for a bulldozer with a back horn and lights.
Right.
It's past bedtime for my kids.
That's it, there's young families here, I know, and this would help them. They help
Well,
everybody.
and that's a policy decision, is it not, Ron, that we could just change it to 8 o'clock at night?
It would require a code amendment. The code currently provides, as Matt said, construction activities shall not commence prior to 7 a.m. on Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. on Saturdays, Sundays, and federal holidays, and shall end no later than 9 p.m. on Monday through Thursday, and 7 p.m. on Friday through Sunday, and federal holidays.
There should be some adjustments made to that, I think.
What is the county code?
I believe that's identical to the
we
county code.
copied the county code, basically.
Not good. Also, I've noticed when Chevy Chase Section 3 and 5 redid all their streets, I believe it was last year, year before, they went back to the practice of painting particular sections of curbing yellow, which is a very common trait all through the country as far as I understand. And I think that would be a great practice for us to do again. It was done several years ago, because it would prevent some people from parking in places that they shouldn't, as I mentioned earlier, that wind up blocking up or including some intersections. So I would strongly, like to see that done again, and it kind of puts a little cleaner look on the community. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger.
Yes. John, did you have something to say? Okay. George?
On the yellow curbing, I thought that was a mandate. Anyway, Martin's Editions doesn't have a rule on there? 'Cause that's a safety issue.
No, I thought we had quit, Joe, had we quit putting yellow out because it wasn't, we've put no parking signs, which are the enforceable part, as I understand it.
Yeah, the painted curb is just, is a secondary aid, it's
Right.
an auxiliary usage. It's not-
So there's nothing for it or against it, or yes, it helps bring attention to the no parking signs?
Yes.
Okay, it will be done.
Don't jump to that.
Okay,
That means doing it throughout the village. Do we
Right.
want to do that?
do we want to do that?
I don't know.
Okay,
Something to be discussed.
sorry, it won't be done.
It may or may not.
Right, it may or may not be done.
I think you ought, from it,
Right, I
where
understand.
I work for,
Right,
and it's all about safety. That's a safety issue,
yes,
okay? You're exposing the community to liability because it's a common practice in other municipalities, and we are not following it, so we're
Right.
subjected.
Sir, that's
Okay, I'm
not
telling you,
correct, sir.
you got some-
There
get
is
some
not a
good lawyers.
liability in this case because, again, it is a secondary control.
I understand.
The city of Rockville, for example, uses no yellow curb, not a stitch.
Okay, not the irritation.
Quickly, this is our traffic engineer who knows
Right.
a lot about this. Could we just say one quick word about the uses or non-uses of yellow curb versus the signs?
Yeah, it can be helpful. The problem, it's my understanding of what occurred here in Martin's Additions is over the years, there became disagreements between neighbors about where the yellow curb ought to go, and people wanted things opposite driveways so they could get out of their driveways. And it got to the point, apparently, when Gene Sperling was here, that the situation got to be that slippery slope sort of thing where we couldn't keep up with it. It just, it was kind of, it had gotten out of hand in terms of where yellow curb went and where it didn't. So,
But what I just heard you say is that it can be helpful as a secondary tool. So if we have a place where there's no parking already, or we have a place where there's a fire hydrant already, it could be used as a secondary tool to highlight that.
absolutely.
Okay.
Does it have to be done across the entire, like, could it be just done in certain
Could it be,
locations?
and legally, could it just be done in specific
Exactly.
locations?
But the problem then becomes, how far do you take it? And then, again, okay, then who wants a regulation on top of that so they can put the yellow curb in? So it gets
okay.
If we were going to do it, we
a lot
should
of
address
politics
it.
with a small p.
Okay, we should address it explicitly and consider the various pros and cons.
And look at the costs.
Right, and costs, right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Frank?
I'm Frank Correll on Turner Lane, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions with regard to this wine tasting that you've got planned on the 11th of June. And what I'm kind of wondering about is what made you pick a date like that, likely to be a very hot day, and not exactly what I would consider to be an ideal time for tasting wine. And also, isn't this kind of going a little bit far afield from a community event where one has to make arrangements for children, babysitters, and where a certain part of the electorate, namely people who have been very strongly encouraged in the past to vote by absentee ballot, college students home from their studies, and other people below the age of 21 are basically excluded from such a community event. And I was going to ask, is the council proposing to pay for such things as babysitters for families that might need them, or prepare some kind of a letter of explanation, of invitation that also tells people who are invited how to keep their adult but below 21 family members away from this community event?
Yes.
To come here during that time, maybe?
Yeah.
And like maybe just.
We had talked about that, actually.
Crafts.
crafts, right? Crafts, a few teenage babysitters.
Yeah, we had discussed it.
We had discussed it about,
What was the reason
potentially-
for not doing it?
That's not a
Liability.
Liability?
Fun.
that's always the issue. It's all,
What's the
They don't want to take care of other people's kids as the council.
right.
And we haven't researched whether
Naomi.
special licensure may be required. We may have to find a
into that?
licensed child care
You
provider.
mean if you have more than a certain number of kids together at one time?
And then the space has to be appropriate as well. The village office is probably not
Child.
suitable, right?
Okay.
So then we have to find
Naomi had a
a venue as well.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but
Yeah.
I think we can have all kinds of different community events.
Yeah. Some for older people,
children's
some for
events,
younger
not for
people.
adults. So the adult events are not always for children. We
Yeah,
can have a
yeah.
variety. Nobody needs to feel excluded. If anybody feels excluded because wine is being tasted, then I think, and if wine is not necessarily the thing to drink on June 11th, maybe beer is.
Well, for children 18 to 21, I don't think would appreciate that particular.
Well, then I think we can have a party for them.
We should have more.
Different kind of variety.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
They could
asking
still come and not have wine. They could have a non-alcoholic beverage.
Departure from previous events like sidewalk celebration,
Right.
4th of July parties we've had, which certainly have tended to bring people together. The annual things that once upon a time were held at La Ferme. And I must say that when I heard about this, I thought, well, that certainly seems a rather unusual
Right.
way.
Right.
Can I?
Sure.
A very quick response, Frank. We deliberately were looking for an event that was different from previous events, and that was designed for adults, not for kids and not for teenagers. So yes, we are being exclusionary at this time, quite deliberately so.
Would you like to tell that to the people you're inviting to vote by absentee ballot?
It's available, it'll be available online in the next day or two when the audio is on.
I don't know, I'm glad to see that you all have found a way of rationalizing all this. I fortunately will be on the other side of the Mississippi at the time, and I'll be skipping it, so I won't be able to see the results. But if you all have thought this out and shared this with the community, I'm sure it'll be a great event.
Thank you for your support. It's in our attempt.
I have one other question.
I know, I would just want to respond though to that, Frank, is anything we try is not perfect, but we want to try. And if this is not successful, and then we won't do it again. But I think we as a community need to try new things.
And may I ask how much this tile is budgeted for?
$12,000.
How much?
$12,000.
$12,000.
Right.
Okay. May I ask a second question?
Yes, you certainly may.
I was rather flummoxed at the candidates forum when you, Mr. Chairman, made the statement that the listserv is too restrictive, that there are people who are being kept off it, and that there has to really change as an improvement. And my understanding of the listserv has been, and it's in every listserv message that comes out that says that things like ad hominem attacks and improper language and all kinds of things like that are not permitted. Are you aware of people who've been banned from the listserv? Who banned, I mean...
I did not use any foul language.
Just a minute, madam. Who have been banned from the listserv, and secondly, my understanding has always been that one of the major efforts of the listserv, and I've been an object of it, has been to find more people to join the listserv rather than be restrictive. So I would really appreciate some kind of a clarification on that.
So my personal clarification is that I have been banned from the listserv I did not break any of the rules of the listserv, and yet I no longer appreciate the benefits that it provides.
You were banned, you were given a message that read it?
No, I just no longer am able to view any messages or send any messages to the listserv.
And all of my
No notification
messages are stopped, and I have to call Bill and tell him, would he please release my messages? And so then he releases them. But if, unlike what most people can do, which is just send, something on the listserv as you did today, I can't do that. I have to send my message, then I have to call Bill to release the message. Otherwise, the message will sit there for 5 days before he gets around to it.
Well, I appreciate you telling me this because it's certainly a shocking bit of news to me.
Well, and we're not the only ones.
Yeah, there are others.
Yeah, a lot of others.
Let me just speak to that too, because I was also thrown off the listserv for trying to put on a little 3-cent thing about the budget. And was never given an explanation, was never given a count. I appealed to the council, who must have talked to the listserv manager. And after 3 days, I was allowed on, but only with screening. And so I'm one of the people who's been censored, and I have never violated the regs. Steve Trowan, who was our wonderful MC tonight for the forum, also has been censored on the listserv, as have a number of other people. But that's just like 4 examples right here. So there is some rather arbitrary behavior, in my perception, on the part of the listserv manager to silence and censor. And in my case, there's just a budget memo.
Has he ever been called to account?
I'm told that when I try to ask him a question, he does not answer, I'll tell you that. And that the council does not respond in terms of, has not responded in the past, because it's private, so they can't do anything. So it's really a hard situation. I mean, if he won't respond, I say, why am I being censored? Why didn't you post my message? I get no response at all. And getting thrown off the listserv with no explanation struck me as extremely unethical, in my personal opinion.
Well, I should think that something that uses the address of VMA one way or another, whether it's private or not, would fall within the purview of the council's interest, and I think that that manager should be called to account.
I would agree. Thank you, sir.
And letters have been sent and requests have been sent and ignored. So I would be very happy for you to talk to Bill about this issue and see whether or not you could have him explain why certain people are being banned, or that all of their messages have to be reviewed before they're sent out.
I'm afraid that I think is not part of my responsibility, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
I think that's something for the council to consider.
What the council has, it's not a council issue because it's private.
Well, that depends how you look at it.
Well, okay.
Thank you for answering the question.
You are very welcome.
Frank?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? May I have a motion to approve the, oh no, I'm sorry, the election committee is next.
Thank you. I'll be brief. You all have my written report. I must say I have a wonderful committee. The election committee has been great. It was quite a shock to have the anonymous 41 nominations to deal with, but I must say our neighbors could not have been more charming as we called and emailed all of them. And I do want to say that although it was very difficult, I appreciate the compliments that the committee got from the community. One person told us we were heroic to make 41 phone calls in less than 12 hours, which we did. I do think that it is something the community needs to take seriously in terms of this hoax that was pulled out. A lot of people were very upset that their names were used without permission to pull off this stunt. A lot of people were very upset that this was done to the village, not just to the small. I mean, to put a burden like this on a very small volunteer committee is in fact an interference with the electoral process. And I've given my written report to the council on this, but we take it very seriously. Not only is it a form of harassment of a volunteer committee, which is harmful to the village because it makes volunteers quit. When you harass a volunteer, why are they going to stick around? This is a way to drive people off of a good committee. And since it's my committee, I take it personally. But also, these kinds of mass nomination scams are used in 2 specific electoral schemes. And I've laid this out for the council as well in the written report. In one case, if the village had put all 41 phony nominees on the ballot, what you get is the votes scattered on election day, so 2 votes here, 3 votes here, so that a write-in candidate who set up the mass nomination scam could get elected with 10 votes. Could have the majority with 10 votes. So there's one electoral scam that just says flooded, have 41 people on the ballot, and do your write-in candidate, they get 10 votes, they win. And the other one is even more devious. The other electoral scam that uses a mass nomination is you nominate 41 people, 40 of them are sham nominees, 1 of them is a legitimate candidate. If the village had just thrown out the whole list as a prank without checking, the perpetrator could then challenge and invalidate the election. So this was not trivial. Right? I have no idea what the intent of the nominator was. Just to harass the committee, or to set up the, write-in candidate can win with 10 votes scam, or to try to invalidate the whole thing, thinking that we would not check. I am very proud of my committee. We checked with every single nominee. None of them wanted to run. But it is an insult to the village for anyone to do this. And I have no idea who did it, but I hope it never happens again. I want to tell you that the election committee will be looking at administrative remedies and will come to the council with some proposals to block this. It might be something as simple as simply having people have to sign their name when they nominate a neighbor. We're not looking at a bureaucratic strategy. On a more positive note, having survived the great hoax of 2017, we had a wonderful, I think, community forum this evening. I thank all the candidates and the council for that. The election packet went to the printer on April 12th. It was mailed on Monday. A lot of people haven't received it. So there's been a problem. The staff is following up with Spectrum Printing about why it hasn't gotten to. Have you guys gotten it yet? Yeah. All right. It's in the mail as of Monday morning. I don't know why it's not here on Thursday. The polls are open from 5 to 8. The election table will be at the south end down here by Turner. VMA staff has been terrific. Thank you, Matt and Beth. In terms of logistics, there will be a fun art project, wine and beer, both for you. New volunteer table where people can sign up for potential committees, right? Interest groups. Participation by great community groups like MANA and Cherry Chase at Home, Cherry Chase Historical Society will be there, library friends will be there, special deals at the shop, and free ice cream again. I want to report that all candidates have a copy of the village election rules and procedures policy and have provided their signed conflict of interest statements, all set. The candidates' names will be in rotating order in the ballots to prevent positional voting bias. Natalie, Naomi, and Lauren will take the lead in setting the polling table, but the rest of us will help. And Steve and I are handling the absentee ballots. Deadline to request an absentee ballot is 3 p.m. on Monday, May 10th. On May 10th, 3 p.m. on May 10th. The next day is the election. The application and instructions are in the packet that has been mailed as of Monday morning, and are also available here in the village office. And again, we will use random numbers on the ballots, the absentee ballots, for security and privacy. We will also prepare a series of friendly public reminder notices to be posted on Constant Contact, as well as an article for the newsletter in April. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure serving on your election committee. I look forward to seeing you all at the polling table on May 11th. Thank you.
A big thanks to the committee. The 41 extra was really unfortunate at best.
It did, in fact, interfere with our electoral responsibilities, and there are some legal ramifications for that.
Okay. So action on the committee minutes of March 16th. They were approved by email. Make a motion, Arthur.
Move to
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Pedestrian and safety pedestrian and Joe Kutro. Could we have your report? Yeah, that's a good idea, so people can hear.
I am Joseph Kutro, professional engineer, traffic consultant to the village and to a number of the other municipalities in the vicinity. You hopefully have received my report, and along with 8 additional tables of, we're talking here about traffic light traffic conditions on Thornapple Street and Taylor Street in the north end. Anyway, it was really intended more to do to just hopefully fill in any gaps, because I know a lot of times when you start throwing out a lot of numbers, it looks like a lot of gobbledygook to people. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to basically query me to see if I can fill in any gaps that in your understanding of what I might have put in front of you. The first thing, though, is to give you information about what's going on out there on Thornapple Street in Taylor. I also have come prepared, but I'm looking at the hour and I'm wondering if we want to get into this or not. But it's my understanding that one of the motivations for taking a look at the traffic on these streets was to consider Thornapple Street as a one-way street. It's a possibility. And I am prepared to talk about the pros and cons of that sort of strategy. But I'm thinking that given the hour, it might be better to hold that particular discussion to another day. But to go onward, as far as what did we not understand about the report and in the tables?
I haven't seen, this is the first time I've seen it. Was it distributed?
I think it's hard to have discussion on a report that we don't have time to review.
Right, can you give us an overview of just the traffic of...
I guess that's what I was asking up front, as far as did you get the report? So,
no.
Okay.
We have it, but we haven't had time to review it as closely as we'd like.
No, I haven't. Was it distributed?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but in any event, what we found, we counted traffic on, recorded traffic on both Thornapple Street and Taylor. And the counts include everything from volume, direction of traffic, speed, classification of the vehicle in terms of how many axles it has, so we can distinguish trucks and buses from passenger cars, etc., etc. The classification, the recording was done basically by the hour. So we have everything hour to hour over a almost 1 week period, March the 29th through April the 4th. April the 5th, I should say. April the 4th, that's right. That's actually more than we originally planned to do. We actually only planned to do 48 hours, but since the rental on the counter units goes for a week, we decided to go ahead and take advantage of that and basically record the entire week. So what we found, the most significant thing that we found was, I'll paraphrase Matt on this, is that essentially Thornapple already works almost as a one-way street today. It is.
I gotta take issue with that. You put that meter up on almost on Brookville Road, and a car parked right on top of it who lives right there every evening and morning and weekend. So you would never count someone heading that way, heading west.
I'm sorry?
You would never count people heading west.
You hit the tube at any location and it records the vehicle.
The direction?
Yes.
How does it know what direction I'm going?
It's an algorithm in the recorder. It knows to distinguish between one from the other by the basis of...
I think people had to go on the wrong side.
It's not like a radar gun. It actually is like if you saw the two little tubes that ran across the street. So that's how.
What could be a problem
If it's too small, then it is one way.
But it was way up the hill.
It is. It's about midway between Chestnut and Brookville Road.
I'm done because a lot of people turn left on Delfield and Chestnut.
Now, what could happen in a case like that is and this is inevitable in any kind of traffic counting situation. You put a parked car near it, and it winds up happening that it winds up influencing speeds.
Right.
So, but
That's a big deal.
nothing you can do. But that is the speed.
Deal.
That is the speed that's there. So,
That matters, though.
you just have to. Well, the thing is, you can't record everything. So it's. But it does. Again, it takes into account the fact that the cars are parked on the street. That's what the speeds are. That's what the speeds are. So, but in any event, but it doesn't affect volume. Volume in any way, shape, or form, or direction. So. But not really, because again, parked cars influence speeds anyway. So. But anyway, back to And so what we have essentially is a heavy imbalance in flow on Thornapple Street. We have there's about 700 vehicles a day on the street. It's about 550 eastbound per day and about 150 westbound going towards Brookfield Road. And I guess, you could look at the reasons for why that is, and I'm sure the most important one is obviously the presence of Taylor Street as a one-way street in the opposite direction. But there's probably other factors of it as well. For example, there's no always stop control, for example, at Brookfield Road. It's easier to get from the neighborhood and including areas, for example, in Rollingwood, it's easier to get onto Brookfield Road via the all-way stop down here at the corner of Taylor Street and also at the corner of Woodbine. So I think people are thinking it's a little bit safer for me to get out this way, so I'll go to Taylor or Woodbine rather than stay on Thornapple. But in any event, the fact remains that at this particular point in time, in fact this has probably been the case for many, many years, is you're heavily one-way eastbound on Thornapple.
And how did that on Taylor Street, how were the counts on Taylor versus the counts on Thornapple?
Okay, balancing both streets out together, you had roughly about the same eastbound and westbound flow. In fact, I mentioned in the paragraph here, second page, third page I should say, looking at Thornapple and Taylor traffic volumes together, one can see that the combined directional flows are well balanced overall. Total westbound ADWT, that's average daily weekday traffic, is 600 vehicles per day across the cordon line that is created by the two counters. Total eastbound volume is slightly less at 530 vehicles a day. So basically westbound traffic, overall westbound traffic is about 53% of it. The imbalance is probably taken out in streets by Woodbine, that kind of thing. So it's so putting the two streets together, you get pretty equal traffic flow. Again, you could talk about things like, actually making Thornapple into a formal one-way street, and then you would probably, basically shift pretty much of that westbound traffic would probably then wind up on Taylor. Not all of it, some of it would wind up on
Do we want to postpone discussion on this now so that we come back to it next week?
Yeah, any other hot spots? You mentioned one thing that I see here, that there's been a slight decline from the last time you measured it, last time you counted.
Yeah, that may or may not be.
In traffic or in speed?
Traffic.
Okay.
One thing, Joe, can you talk about what impact speed bumps might have if we were to put speed bumps on Thornapple Street?
Speed humps in a case like that, speed humps have to be designed for speed between 20 and 25 miles per hour by national standard. And the fact is the speeds on Thornapple are probably not high enough to make a speed hump efficient. You could probably get a little bit of speed reduction in that particular vicinity, perhaps, well, let's see, you bring the 85th percentile probably down maybe 2 miles per hour or so. That is probably the longest stretch on the street too, between the stop signs. So it's.
Joe, can I?
But again, it's probably a do no harm kind of thing. But I think frankly, it'd be a waste of money sort of thing. So Montgomery County wouldn't allow it simply from an efficiency standpoint.
Okay. Can I ask just a question? I know we'll talk about this more. So, just looking at the Thornapple Street traffic speed summary.
Okay.
The posted speed limit is 20 miles an hour, right?
Right.
And we have 66% of the traffic.
Of vehicles are exceeding the 20 miles per hour speed limit.
So, what would be your recommendation to get folks to get down to that 20 mile per hour speed limit?
There's probably not much you could do. It's probably not much. You could say enforcement, but the police are really not crazy about enforcing 20 mile per hour speed limits.
But I mean,
if we directed our police to do so, I mean, is there, like, I know with the speed camera on Connecticut, the village of Chevy Chase, you do it once, you don't do it a second time.
So is it possible to get a speeding camera?
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of things, we've talked about that before, all kinds of
Your
issues.
problem is that a speed limit like that has to be justified by an engineering study, and the engineering study takes into account actual traffic speeds. This is not something I'm sure anybody wants to hear, but the fact of the matter is that the speed limit is probably set artificially low. So that's
in an attempt to, it's a narrow street, as you well know, and it makes sense for the speed limit not to be artificially low.
Problem with that speed limit.
Right.
The problem is getting vehicles down to that speed is a very, very difficult thing to do. So
I guess when we come back to this, maybe.
now, I mentioned before with a speed hump, for example, at about that location, you could probably pick up maybe 2 miles per hour. Or so, and on the 85th percentile, and that would probably improve your compliance, get it someplace maybe down to 40-45%.
So, but the county has the right to tell us whether we can put speed bumps or...
No, it's ours.
It's ours.
Totally.
Or any kind of, we could put any sort of thing, like I've gone down streets that have series of low bumps. Rumble strips that slow, I mean, you slow down because it's...
well, Richard slows down.
Well, Richard... They don't help.
They would be loud.
Well, that's true.
Wake up.
Rumble, there's an actual official term, rumble strip, and it really doesn't apply to residential neighborhoods. Typically used at toll booths to slow people down.
I'm from Texas. We could put in a cattle bar.
Even sidewalk, does that matter to the, what is it, I mean, this is a street with no sidewalk on it, so you're talking about people who are walking in the street. I mean, I guess I'm just, the 66% are exceeding the speed limit.
I'm not espousing anything, so what should I'm trying to give the facts here.
I still am, I feel concerned about I mean, I know what you're saying, that yes, they would always slow down. There's like 2 cars that park on Thornapple, and like almost nobody parks on Thornapple up in that area, and so people pick up speed as they're coming down. If you happen to get your strip on the one place in that location where somebody is parked, of course they're going to slow down to get past a car. I have some study. I know that this is all been done very scientifically, but there seems to be some mitigating factors that would distort the data that we're getting about the length of Thornapple.
We wouldn't. Sidewalks. We were located in the right spot.
There's no place you could put.
Yes, there is. On the other side of Thornapple, beyond Delfield, is where the traffic comes.
There really isn't a place that you can put a counter that's going to make any difference in terms of.
You're completely wrong.
Or 2?
Well, are you? Wait.
You're telling me now I don't know what down my
Pat.
Listen, you're putting the thing on the wrong spot. People come down Thornapple, they go left on Delfield. They go left on Chestnut. Very few people go up to Brookville, and they take a right. So don't you come here and tell me what does not happen on my goddamn street.
Your face is turning red.
Because I'm pissed, because he's telling me I'm wrong. I got 17 years. He mentioned it for 4 days. You're out
of order.
Yes. Could you run, how much does it cost us to rent the stuff? To rent the counters?
Let me see. It's, I believe, $150 a week.
So if we put the counters in a different place, as they've suggested, what is the problem with doing that?
It costs, but that's...
Right, at $150, I'd do it again.
Frankly, you're not going to see it.
Well, but let us see.
Sure.
Okay, I would like to do that as a way to come to some term on this.
One other thing in the past, we'll discuss this again. You had suggested chicanes or introducing forcing cars to make little curves as a way to slow down. But that also takes away parking spaces
Well,
that
the
people
street's
don't
only
like.
20,
Yeah.
to get to.
Would it be inappropriate on that street?
Doing a chicane on a 20-foot street would be very difficult.
Okay, okay, you suggested on some possible
It's off the train.
Okay, good.
In addition to the additional study, just if you wouldn't mind thinking about the road hump, even if it picks us up, that 2
Oh, I
miles per
have no
hour.
problem thinking about it. I mean, that's, again, that's your call in terms of...
Okay, because we've not had adequate time to review this, and I think that having another study, because there seems to be real concern by some of the residents, I'd like to postpone any further study on this, or comments on this, until we do another study and we can review what we've already
And
got.
can I ask where the counter should go?
Yes, you can, those two would, I think the residents would happily help you determine those counters.
Delfield and Summit. A lot of people, and the guy who lived in the corner in the small house on Delfield and Summit was here last time. Talked about how many people just go flying through the...
Okay, but can we do that outside the meeting with Joe? And so we can go forward, because it's getting late and I'm tired. Pardon?
No big deal.
Richard, I'd like to document something on this. Can we also do another study up on Summit Avenue? If we're doing one, we can afford to do a second one.
Yeah.
But we,
Have you looked at Summit in the past? Do we have comparisons?
We may, but
I
that
can't
would,
recall.
it would be fairly old data.
Okay, let's do it on Summit, and also so we get speeds and traffic, is
Let's
that?
see what I can tell you.
Okay, well, we'll just do it, because I want to move on. That's what I'm trying to do here, is move on to another subject so we go home tonight. Thank you.
one last thing from George.
Yes, George.
I was gonna say, you want us, the residents, to be here,
Yes,
listen to us,
yes,
then the subject.
but, yes.
Okay, and I know you want to get out of here before midnight. I agree with my neighbor,
Right.
and it shocks me that you may consider making Thornapple a one-way street.
I think it's
We would not have bought the house on Thornapple if it becomes a one-way street, because we turned down the other street, Taylor.
I got it in the context that it was, just an idea that was thrown out.
Okay,
that's
so
safety and
again, it's
considerations around that. Nothing's on the table on that.
Okay,
the
but
kind of thing you're talking about. Go ahead, sir.
okay, but I'm going to say is on the counts, whether it's 3 to 1 in one direction, you need to talk to the neighbors that live who are going to be affected by that. Irregardless of the numbers. Now, I told you what I do for a living. This is a very limited study that we would never use to make a decision like this, because you're just getting a tiny little snapshot, and you don't see all the ramifications what it really does. It's already pointed out to you that people are speeding above this.
They believe, right.
60% or 675, I haven't seen the
Right.
report either. So that tells you need to do something. But my neighbor here, Dennis, said something about a speed bump. Speed bump actually makes people slow down.
Right.
So you got the stop sign there, but
Right.
people are still going through this, so
Right.
you need to take some positive action. So, that one-
Thank you. I want the discussion to end on this because we're going to do more work.
Residents is important, he's right.
Right, but it's also a council meeting, and the council meets and decides the issues. We have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting for resident input, but if we are going to use you as our council meeting, then get elected, because we're getting nothing done. That's what the council is here to meet. You are here to observe, and we do value your comments at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. And we're trying to move on.
Maybe it's important to note that we are not really allowed to meet outside of this and prepare for these
Right.
meetings and discuss and vet the ideas beforehand. This is it. This is the only time we can actually discuss it in person with all of us here.
We don't have the stuff you guys are looking at.
Right.
I don't have this.
But in the,
But we lived it.
Was it not published in,
we would never
on the
make
website?
a change.
No, I mean,
without
I
consulting
can.
residents.
This study was not on the website yet.
No.
Okay. Right. Okay.
As part of the rest of the packet.
Yeah, I mean, it will be included.
Okay, let's move on to the ordinance, please.
Ordinance 217-1 is ready for public hearing. This is the ordinance that would amend the code to require an informational meeting for certain construction projects. The meeting would be a non-binding informational meeting that would provide an opportunity to exchange information, inform residents about construction schedules, what parking would be like, traffic, and other issues. The requirement would be triggered only if the construction project was big enough. That is, if it involved 500 square feet more floor area or demolition of 50% or more of the exterior walls. And it was introduced last month. Again, it's ready for public hearing tonight.
Okay, any questions on it? Is there a motion to adopt? Is this our second public hearing, or are we introducing?
First hearing, so.
First hearing, so we can't.
Ask if there's public comment.
Is there public comment?
Then we can entertain a motion to adopt.
Okay, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 217-1?
I move to adopt 217-1.
Second?
I will second it.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Public hearing on tax resolution.
Right. We have published the budget proposal for the coming fiscal year 2018. It has been posted on the website. It was introduced at the last meeting. There are a few small changes listed in a discussion of it. We anticipate a somewhat of an increase in our revenues from the income tax and increase in a few expenditures that are noted in the discussion. The tax rate will be held at the same level as last year. For the record, if anyone listens to this, there had been a complaint last week that the posted budget was too tiny to see online. I will remind viewers that using their browser, they can increase the size of any document. On a Mac, it's Command plus. I don't know what it is on a PC. So if you have difficulty reading it, enlarge it.
You go to View and then Zoom.
View Zoom.
Right.
We'll do it. This is the second hearing on this. On the proposed budget. The figures are available online. They were published last week. And did we have any questions raised? I have not had any questions raised.
No, and there's opportunity for public comment on this also.
Yes.
Did this address any changes discussed in our
Well,
last-
there will be a change. I am going to, in the financial matters, will propose we have to amend the budget.
For the
this
current
year,
year.
the current year budget. At the same time, no, next year's will be taken care of. I think we'll be okay. So I don't think we need to make any changes as far as I know.
Right.
Does that cover salaries and expenses as discussed in our executive session last?
Right.
Okay.
So what do we have to do with this?
This is just a hearing, no action. It will be adopted at the
next meeting.
So it'll be available at the annual meeting for one more hearing. Okay. Oh, we've done the drainage issue, so we can move on to proposed budget amendments.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the financial. We can get down.
Right.
The proposed budget amendments are to increase the amount for our building review and increase the set aside, the what do we call it? The reserve account for the wind decision. I think we're nearing the end of the wind decision. I've been looking at each fiscal year as they report it, and the earlier fiscal years are completely stabilized. There's no changes at all. So everything is coming up into the most recent one, which was 2014. So I think we'll stabilize at about $200,000 total liability. So I suggest that we increase the reserve account for the wind decision to $200,000 and increase the amount for building review to, Beth, what did we say, $35,000?
$35,000.
$35,000. Everything else looks very solid. I don't think anything else is overrunning.
And we're still running in excess even with these changes, which amount to $15,000 for building review and $4,000 at
It's actually
least.
3,300.
3,300 for the wind decision. So is there a problem? Do I have a motion to make those amendments?
Shall I move? I will move to amend the fiscal year 2017 budget to increase, what's the exact title? Building review.
Building review and permits?
And permit to $35,000. Right. I need my glasses.
And
oh, there we go. Where'd that come from? And the wind amendment from 196,000 to raise it to 200,000.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
Okay.
Village accounting function, Trollinger.
Sure, so I'll keep it brief. We've been in discussion with our current accountant who provides bookkeeping services for us. He has agreed to reduce his fee for the next year. It still is a high enough figure that it might be something that we want to continue to look at. One of the options would be to bring bookkeeping services in-house. So that'll be something that we continue to look at moving forward and have further discussions with some of the other municipalities and how they handle that.
And you've had some of those discussions.
I have, yeah. Trying to set up, I mean, it's budget season for everybody right now,
Right.
so, but Section 3's manager, Andy Harney, she's offered to come in and give a tutorial. They use QuickBooks, which is actually the same program that our accountant uses right now, so she offered to come in and show how easy it is for her to...
and she does it herself.
That's right. And I also met with H&R Block to see what their bookkeeping services would be. They offer bookkeeping services as well. One thing is that it would probably require us to write checks as well in-house, which is something that we don't do now, which could also be a positive thing because on occasion on some of our monthly bills, between sending it over there, issuing it, sending it back here, getting the two signatures, putting it in the mail, and sending it out. That's sort of an antiquated process, so sometimes we fall behind, not because we've slacked off, but just because the sheer amount of steps in it.
Right. So if we were to be doing that in-house, the accounting in-house and writing the checks in-house, you save the time of sending things out and getting them back, physical things.
Yeah, and I mean as I said, there are other options that we're looking at. One of the things we talked about is looking into auto pay enrollment and certain things like that. So there's a couple.
You mean that things that have regular payments?
Exactly. Yeah, and and still putting in some sort of oversight mechanism where the council is approving it and signing off on it.
Right.
But that it sort of automatically gets taken out of the account so that we don't have to issue a physical check every time.
And have the possibility of late fees.
Right.
Which has been recurring a lot.
Right.
And that doesn't help. I mean, we're not borrowing money, but it's just bad business.
And hasn't resulted in a huge amount of money, but I mean,
Late fee's a late fee.
Right, exactly. So there's a couple of alternatives across the spectrum. We're continuing to look into that.
Good.
Okay. So now I have you on again. It's for financial matters. It's goodbye. So then, could we have the building report, Doug?
Sure. Just a couple things to highlight. Last month we talked about 3414 Cummings Lane. We had released the building permit, but we were holding the performance bond because they had some damaged sidewalks. They've since come in and applied for a permit, apron permit for the driveway, and they should be this week weather permitting, or next week, replacing the sidewalk in the apron on Cummings. The other one I wanted to point out is on 3405 Thornapple. Last month, we were asking for a height survey. We provided a height survey, and the survey showed that the building didn't exceed the maximum height.
Did not exceed, is that what you said? Okay, good.
It's acceptable.
Okay.
So, was it within a half an inch, within an inch, within a foot?
More like a half a foot to a foot.
Okay,
It wasn't real close.
okay.
And it was surveyed by Cass Engineering, signed by our licensed registered surveyor, so it's official.
Right, got it.
It wasn't a guess.
Right. I understand. Thank you.
On 3407, the property next door, Matt and I have been in discussions with their engineer about submitting something to the town. I talked to him yesterday. They are hoping to submit possibly a variance on that property sometime, I guess, in May for the front setback. So we'll wait and see what they're going to submit to the town.
Where is that?
That's where they moved the house from, that's on Thornapple,
Right.
old house.
Remember, they took the house, moved
Right.
it over here. They want to build a new house around the area where the old house was, basically.
We're talking about Raymond or
Thornapple.
Thornapple. I'm sorry, I was on the wrong one. Okay,
That also happened on Raymond, but
yeah,
that was years ago.
right. Okay, so we can expect a variance,
That's what they said they wanted to do, yes, flat variance.
and would that go out to all the neighbors then?
Yes.
Okay.
Just clarification, it says there is an issue of building setbacks, meaning they could build something different on the property and not have this issue arise. But given their current building plans, an issue is arising.
Because there's nothing there. I mean,
Is that right?
there's nothing under construction, there's no structure there, nothing.
Right.
So it's a open lot, so they can put it wherever they want.
Blank slate.
Or no, they can put it wherever we want.
The lot is very, very narrow.
Oh.
So they, as it based on, feel free to jump in, but the idea is mostly with side setbacks, it would be sort of a hot dog shaped house.
I see.
But at the same time, like,
Sure.
this is the code.
Yep, sure.
The code has not changed.
They moved the house knowing this, is that, I mean, it isn't like you move a house and don't have a plan.
That's right.
Doug would not move a house
Well,
without a plan.
Just saying, generally
I'm
speaking.
not sure they had a plan. Because they're in a bind right now, unless a variance is granted.
Or they could change the...
Well, it would be
Some of us
probably a
live in
10-foot wide,
dog houses.
60-foot long house,
Very happy.
They put a trailer in.
Right.
Okay.
single wide trailer. The other two things I wanted to mention is a storm inlet on North Dellfield, this 7,000 block, and we're trying to get the far end, and we're trying to get Montgomery County to repair that inlet. There's some question about whether it is a county inlet or a private inlet. So Matt has talked to a couple people, and I've talked to a couple people. We're waiting for a decision on that. The grade has slipped off, and it's a safety issue, so we're trying to get somebody to fix it. We might have to go back to the homeowners if the county won't do it, to ask them to repair it, or maybe the village will repair it. So it's up in the air right now.
Okay.
The other one is on Bradley Lane on the south side. A car had hit a storm drain. You all saw the picture or
It's
not?
actually on Raymond. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, but it's on Raymond Street.
Raymond?
Yeah. Sorry to throw you for but yeah, it's on Raymond Street.
That a storm drain was hit?
Yeah, I mean everything else, right? Yeah, it kind of sticks out a little bit from the curb, and so somebody had a visitor, and they ran into the curb and punctured their tire. So that's kind of the story.
On Raymond? Or
On Raymond Street.
I will say that it's happened twice to different cars on Bradley. So maybe
Bradley.
whenever
Maybe it
they
is
come and
Bradley.
check it out, have them check out.
I'll look at both of them tomorrow.
Okay.
And I looked at Bradley, I think.
Okay.
So,
It's the same issue, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
I had to apply for a
Which gutter is
service
this?
authorization from Montgomery County to have
Down at the
one.
dead end.
What, on the construction activities that are early and late, have you addressed them or dealt with them or warned them or what?
So we got one night where they were working late. We had multiple, I think 3 or 4 people had let us know. So I issued a formal warning at that point. There was another instance where it wasn't clear to me. One person had sent in a complaint at, I think, less than 5 minutes after 9 o'clock, which is still outside the permit. So I sent Jody, the builder, Jody Longo, another email letting her know that there was another complaint, and that if we receive more formal complaints, that we'll begin issuing citations to her.
And have there been since then?
Not that has been reported.
Okay, good, okay.
But can we issue citations, or does a citation include a stop order?
I think there's 2 different things we can do.
Because I think the stop order, the citation is money, is that right? Mm-hmm. And I think that issuing a stop order and having them spend a day reviewing with all of their workers what the times are is what's necessary, so that you
And
just close
presenting a
it.
plan for compliance before the stop work order is lifted.
Right.
How about we do both at the same time?
A citation and a stop work order?
Yeah.
Okay, but I think that because the neighbors have complained more than once, I just think something serious should be done. I mean, including the stop work order.
Sure.
And it seems
If
like
there's-
for
if there's
construction,
another
once they
complaint.
start
Right.
If there's
digging,
another
Right.
complaint,
it
right.
usually is common for them to continue to break
Right.
from previous experience on other construction sites.
Right.
Yeah. So if we get an additional complaint,
You have our,
And you told her that the next one is going to be,
that's right.
right,
Yes.
so just follow through on what you said.
Yep.
And we support you.
right, you've got council support behind you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Anything else to report, Doug? Thank you. We don't need any motions for that one, and then moving on to the manager's report.
Sure. So again, I'll try to be brief here. Just hit the big items. Our website is seeing a slight uptick in views. Probably will jump up again over the next month leading up to the election. The council had appointed me as its representative to Montgomery Municipal Cable Board, which is a non-profit organization that was created out of the funds that were given to the county by the different utility companies to operate within the county. So each of the municipalities in the area has the right to have a representative on the board, and so I'm just waiting for our first meeting, but we had a lot of people talk about events and ways to get involved, but they offer programming on MMC, so that might be some opportunity for a committee or interested residents to get involved and put together programming or something of that nature. Contracts. So our website, we have selected Revised Software Systems and to redesign our website. We held a kickoff meeting with them over the past month with a questionnaire. We filled out a questionnaire. We invited some input from residents on some of the different possibilities and some of the different templates that they used. And we actually, within this, I think yesterday, actually received a preliminary design on our homepage. So I haven't had a real good chance to look over it closely, but it was exciting, and it looks like it's going to be
Were you
nice
able to log
looking.
in?
Did you have trouble?
Yeah,
logging in?
I had
well,
trouble
they
logging
gave
in.
you, in the email was
Yes, I tried that and still didn't log
I
in.
did, I got in.
Was
Well, I
that
worked.
today? Did you try to log in? Because I got an email today that they changed some permissions or something. They might have done something on their end to go in and change something and took away our permission to look at it or
Oh.
something. So
Maybe it was today.
I'll follow up tomorrow.
I worked yesterday. At first, I missed the password and everything.
Yeah, I missed
on the
that too.
first
Went
email.
back, found that.
I went back
Tried to log in several times,
right,
it wouldn't let me in.
It worked
Okay.
yesterday.
So whenever you find out, just send it back to us and we can.
Yep. I'll shoot you the login info for that.
Thank you.
We have a RFP for the GIS system. I don't know if I had circulated it before, but I did today in case I hadn't. So that's out there. We'll begin to edit that and then hopefully get that out within the next month, I would think. And same applies for leaf vacuuming. That one's a little bit simpler. So I think once I need to tack on some of the legal documents on the end of it, but I think that one will be able to go out pretty quickly. So we have somebody selected and ready to go for the fall.
On the leaf vacuuming, I don't know if we've had any insurance changes, Ron, but I know the last time we did it, like a year later, you had to up the insurance numbers, so just make sure you connect.
Yeah, I'll be sure to double check that, because I don't think I had included that stuff on the draft I had sent around anyway, so. Rolling Acres did a street cleaning, picked up the salt bins, cleaned the gutters. Repaving has started, so finally we're seeing some action there. So far the only street that's been done is Oxford. Bradley's next. Hopefully, if we don't get rain tomorrow, they'll do Bradley, but Mother Nature's not really cooperating.
Cummings is all milled.
That's right.
So is Bradley.
So what happened?
Bradley,
So what happened is the rain affects our ability to lay new asphalt. It doesn't really affect the ability to chop off 2 inches of the street. So they've been able to kind of take it a day at a time, move northward up the village, but they've been delayed on actually. So Bradley's next. Then we'll go to Cummings, then Shepherd, and we had to reorganize a little bit so that Raymond, Melville, and Bradley weren't all closed at the same time, so we had to double back a little bit. But
And just for the record, I know that there are some residents who are concerned about parking, but we as village residents ourselves had to park on Quincy last night because there was no parking on Raymond and there was no parking on Melville. I'm not complaining. I think everybody has to understand we have to be flexible while this is going on. And
flexible.
You and Beth are doing a great job of communicating about the delay.
And we haven't had any issues with people parking as of yet. So,
And you haven't had to tow anybody.
Right. So thank you to residents so far for their flexibility and cooperation and patience.
But I'd also like to say on behalf of VEERS, those people have been incredibly helpful, at least for those of us who are around during the day. They have helped us get in and out of the car. They actually helped me carry groceries one day. You know, they have been really, they've gone out of their way to help.
Well, that's
and they've been really nice.
I think their subcontractor, Classic Concrete, I think did a good job with the concrete in general throughout the village. But in talking to Mike VEERS, he had said, I can't wait for us to repave it because that's where we really shine. So he was excited to get that work done. And I think.
Well, I think you should pass on to him that his staff have been, at least my experience with them, has been incredibly positive.
Okay, thank you.
And I thought you guys did a great job communicating the changes.
Yes.
Oh boy, one after the other.
I know.
Yeah, if anything, I'm sorry if it's getting bombarding and maybe
I think we need it at
inundating.
this point because there's so many changes.
So I've been trying to send out 2 a day.
I was just checking, but is the latest schedules up on the
Yes,
on the website?
so I've been also
Right.
if
I was
any
looking.
changes, those links on the website and on the calendar, those are up to date, and I've added sort of parenthetical things that explain: are we milling, are we paving, are we doing speed bumps, or what specifically are we doing
Right.
that day, so people can
Okay.
follow it a little bit more closely. Street lighting.
Yes.
We received a pricing agreement from Pepco. We signed it, sent it over. So they sent the order down to their manufacturer, Hall of Fame. We're waiting to receive an invoice from them, so that should be forthcoming in the next week. They said it was supposed to come this week, so I asked him again yesterday, and he said it should come by mid next week. So it always kind of.
So will we have new lights by 2020?
2020, that's a definite maybe. Yeah.
So does the invoice trigger the installation somehow?
So
How does it relate to actual lights on the streets?
yeah.
What does it mean?
Once we've got our invoice, they'll start their manufacturing of the actual equipment.
So once they probably receive the money, not just we got the invoice, but also got the, okay.
So
we will issue those checks really quickly.
yeah. Pepco has said it could take 10 to 12 months.
What?
Weeks.
I'm sorry.
Weeks.
Let the record show.
10 to 12 weeks.
2.5 to 3 months.
Hall of Fame has told me that they could potentially push it up to six weeks. So expedite the process and get it back to them in 6 weeks.
So what
Production versus installation.
Right. So it would probably be another 2 weeks after they're produced and sent back to Pepco before they would begin installation. So, so yes.
It's like every time there's yet another thing that's added.
You feel like
But
we've
you know what?
gotten so
They're
close.
excited because they're getting money. They're about to get money. So we just keep.
But we're not paying them everything up front, right?
Well,
yeah, I think that we are.
Yeah, I mean, we're paying for the agreement that they sent us was for labor, parts, installation, everything all
And
together.
that was a lot less than we thought it was going to be.
We have a chance to come significantly under budget on the project.
But the requirement from Hall of Fame or the requirement from Pepco is that we pay 100% up front?
That's, I believe, what they will send the invoice for. But I can.
So once we do receive the invoice, can you send around the information on that?
Yes.
I'll be curious to see if there's an installment of, once it's installed,
Right.
or once at least some of it is installed.
Yeah,
more
we
is
had
due.
an installment agreement, I know, with AB Veers to do one third up front,
So
1/3
obviously
once
the
it begins,
preferred
and then.
route that you're sensing from here is
Right. Yes,
installments.
that makes sense to do maybe a third up front, a third once it begins, a third once it's finished. That
Right.
I think would be kind of a standard agreement.
That would be worthwhile, yes.
I mean, it's just been going on for so long. It's
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
hate to lose the only leverage we have.
Right.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. Everything else, I think, has been more or less covered and sent out, and is maybe a slight tweak from previous months, but more or less just an update.
Okay, so now that everybody's gone home mad, does anybody have any remarks? Any comments?
Let him go, then I'll tell you.
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Does the council communicate and coordinate with builders from the very get-go when a realtor gets into the picture and there's a house sold?
Okay, we would probably, if the people are moving, we'd get involved to put up no parking signs to facilitate the moving.
No, but after
And I know, but then with the house sold, nothing until they come to us with plans and say they want to do something. That's usually the first time we see them.
Yeah, in any official capacity, yeah.
But there can be informal discussions.
Right.
They initiated.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dennis, is your question, if someone buys property and they intend to do construction on it, when does the village engage?
Yeah, where does the interaction start?
When
Formally.
when the builder or owner comes to the village office and says, hey, I got an idea, I'm thinking I'm going to do this.
Or formally when they submit a permit application.
A secondary question, is there a law or guidance in the county or within the real estate community that says when a house is bought by someone and is paid for, that it has to be processed through the real estate registration and the county registration system? Is there a time window that has to take place where it gets a new title and everything is processed?
I don't know. We don't.
I don't
that's,
know.
That's,
Yeah,
get involved in.
do you know, Doug,
No.
what the process
Is that
is?
real estate law? Do you practice
yeah.
real estate law?
I do not believe there's a code requirement compelling, but as a practical matter, most owners want their deed recorded as soon as possible to make sure a deed doesn't get in front of them. And once the deed's recorded, it's reported to ESTAT for taxation purposes by the closing attorney.
And the reason for my question is that the house to my right, the Schmall's former home, it was sold way back in December. The transaction was completed. They received their funds. They moved to California. And the person who has bought the house, from what I've been able to find out through a realtor, is that nothing has taken place as far as a new title or any administrative actions on that property.
It can take a couple months before a deed will show up in land records.
But we're in April, December.
This is
I mean,
well beyond.
I have seen it before where, for some reason or another, someone doesn't record their deed right away. It does happen.
And why I'm concerned is because there was talk on the street originally, literally on the street, that this house was going to be torn down. And then there've been new issues brought up where there are certain restrictions and covenants that they cannot get any variances on the north side, which is a Thornapple side, in order to take and possibly do a new construction that would step over the existing property lines. I'm just kind of figure out, is there something going on that could turn around and bite not just me as an adjoining property owner, but this community?
Right. And the answer is?
I
Probably.
mean, once we get an application, then we'll look at it and.
Are you saying that the adjoining property is comprised of small lots and there's an internal lot line?
One lot.
No.
It's one lot, it's a corner
It's a
lot.
corner lot. It does have constraints on one
Two
side. We met with the Smalls over a year ago, and there are constraints on the property if it's torn down or if an addition's added to it.
What are
We see nothing.
Okay, so until we see something, there's nothing we can do.
No.
I mean, that doesn't give you a good answer.
But they cannot build a house without a permit.
Right. And they can't tear it down without a permit.
Right.
Right. Now, if that process does start, then I, as a neighboring property owner, I want to know specifically what their intentions are, plans, details, etc.
Once an application is filed, you will receive notice as an adjoining neighbor that the application has been filed. You can come into the office and look at the plans. If they need a variance, that is, if they request something that they're not allowed to build as a matter of right, public hearing would be required, and you'd receive notice of the public hearing.
All of the neighbors would, not just.
And is there a website that you can go to where
We might have an information meeting.
Yes.
right?
We discussed it earlier tonight, actually putting into the code an informational meeting.
Is there a website where you can see property transactions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And I
Other than
presume
Zillow.
you've
Other
checked
than
it.
Zillow.
That's where nothing has shown up.
Yeah, that's,
Even having a realtor do this, because they have those avenues that general public does not because of their licensing.
well, but I would think, as Ron has said, that you know, it's not our issue, but I would think there would be a deed. You know, I would think the homeowner would want that protection, or the property owner in this
The
case.
swans are coming back.
Yeah.
They hate California.
I mean,
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Did Keith want to say something?
There's a lot of food back here. I brought this back, that's why I left earlier.
Okay.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very
We're
much,
only
all of you.
three minutes over your published
That
time.
is surprising that we're only 3 minutes.
Well, I feel this needs to be turned